Blog Talk Radio.
Alternative facts.
The following message is transmitted at the request of the United States government. At 12:07 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, numerous unidentified objects of unknown intent and unknown origin were detected at high altitudes over multiple locations of Earth's outer space by the National Radio Astronomy Observatory, and these objects are presumed to be some form of controlled aircraft. It is not known if more of these aircraft will arrive, or if they will attempt entering Earth's atmosphere. United States citizens are encouraged to monitor local media outlets, as more updates will follow as information becomes available. The following message is transmitted at the request of the United States government. Attacks by the undead have been reported in several states across the country. The dead are rising from their graves and are attacking the human race. At this time, it is expected that more attacks of this nature will occur in several other states in the next few hours. The intent behind their attack is unknown at this time. He has been observed that a bike or exchange of fluids is a method of transmission. This is an extremely dangerous situation if they crave the taste of human flesh. It is not known whether this event will last for hours, days, or even longer. Stay calm, as authorities have been dispatched to deal with these creatures. An all-clear siren will be sounded when this situation is under control. Pacific Standard Time, nor is detected a long-range nuclear missile launcher. This missile is believed to be headed in the direction of all residents within a 400-mile radius of this area should seek a fallout shelter immediately.
Welcome to Within the Chaos with your host,
Rodney Shortridge,
and co-host,
Robin Dalton.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. You can listen in by going to blogtalkradio.com/withinthechaos, or listen in by phone. You can dial 323-870-4197, and you can also call in to ask questions to our guests at the same number, 323-870-4197. From deep within the heart of the Appalachians, I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you all for listening to Within the Chaos. My name is Rodney Shortridge, and I'll be your host tonight, along with my fiery redhead co-host, Robin Dalton. Well, I don't think Robin's going to be with us much longer. She's busy with a lot of work at home, but I do have my dark-haired raven, Melinda, here.
Hey, everyone.
Well, tonight our special guest is Jeannette La Tulippe. I hope I'm saying this right. If I'm not, I do apologize. Jeannette is a graduate from California State University, Fullerton, Later in life, she received a BA in psychology. Jeannette is the author of the UFO Bigfoot Connection, Our Past, Our Present, Our Hell. She has worked in shops of various types and was a prototype machinist. Later, she worked for county government, often assisting analysis, solving problems. She is retired and has been a UFO researcher for 5 years and fell into the researching of cryptid part of this because of their association with UFOs high in the Cascade Mountain Range. Jeannette has experienced the UFO phenomenon since her early 20s. She has been on various radio and YouTube shows and has been a featured investigator on MUFON's Journal. So now I'd like to give a shout out to my cousins up in Ohio, Jennifer and Joe Shortridge of 222 Paranormal. Get a chance to check out their talk show. You can find them on Facebook under 222 Paranormal. Want to give a big shout out to all the Facebook paranormal groups that allow us to post our shows and their pages and helping us get the word out about all of our amazing guests. Also, a shout out to the Connor sisters, Misty and Ashley. They are the founders of SOS Sisters of Salem Paranormal Research Society and host of their podcast, Paranormal Party. You can find them also on Facebook under Paranormal Party. So, Melinda, how was your week?
It's been very busy, but it has been so beautiful outside.
Oh, gosh, it's been great.
I know. I actually wore sandals to work today, so I'm ready.
70.
Come on, spring.
70-some degrees here.
Yes.
I know there's people down the south are like, oh, we get 70 all the time. You know, they can kiss our ass.
Yes, they can.
Because we lucky we get 70-degree weather in the wintertime. Well, I'll go ahead and we'll get this show started. It's my honor to welcome Jeannette. And Jeannette, thank you for joining us tonight. How are you doing?
Hi, thank you, Rodney, for inviting me onto your show this evening, first of all. And I'm doing pretty good. I'm kind of this is going to be an interesting show, and usually when I speak about these kinds of things, I have a lot of anxiety because it was very traumatic for me to go through all of it. But every now and then, when I hesitate just a little bit, what I'm doing is I'm going to be looking at my talking points and making sure I'm on track here.
That sounds great. Well, I don't want you to stress out now.
No, I'm not. I'm going to be talking this evening about some of the UFOs I've seen, but what I'm also addressing, too, is what's happened after I've seen them. And I think that's really important, and so far, I haven't seen much attention brought to that by people that have witnessed UFOs. I don't know if follow-up hasn't been done or whatever, or maybe people are just too afraid to respond, but I think that's very important to bring up.
Oh, well, I agree. Well, since you already brought that up, Melinda, I'll let you go ahead and ask that question then.
Okay. What type of UFOs have you witnessed and researched?
Well, actually, I haven't researched, and what I do research is when I'm on an actual case. I'm assigned a case, and then I go from there. Some of my cases I've reported, some of them I haven't. That's because the people that I report them to, even though they're not supposed to be, they are very narrow-minded and or were at the time, and they wouldn't even address the issue of Bigfoot in conjunction with a UFO sighting. So I just kept that to myself. But I have witnessed the first craft I've seen has been a saucer, and I'll talk about that in a minute and everything that happened after seeing that. I've seen a saucer. I've seen a barbell-shaped. I've seen a more or less bell-shaped craft, a cigar, good grief, a fish cracker-shaped craft, and that's about all I can recall right now. There may have been another. I can't think of it right now, probably until I go through my notes.
Okay. Well, since you're talking about, the types of different UFOs you've seen, what types of UFOs, has your research found around the world with those UFO claims? Are they different types in North America as opposed to like England or Russia? Or
well,
are they?
I haven't gone all over, but I look at a lot of videos. I look at and obviously I connect with people that are in the field, and primarily I think people are seeing the orbs, which is what I saw. Okay, that was another one I couldn't bring to mind, and the orbs and the triangles and the saucer shapes. I believe a lot of people see, but I haven't heard of any bell-shaped reported as of recent.
Well,
the barbell has been reported. As a matter of fact, within I believe it was somewhere within 4 days before I saw mine. I think that there was a craft that showed up in, it may have been New Jersey, and before that there was one in Canada, and I didn't look it up because I'm so busy writing. I didn't read the report as to the shape of it. I know that one was reported in Florida, but that was just a little dinky thing. That was like only 30 inches long, and it could have been a drone. And it wasn't the shape mine was either.
Oh, okay. Well, has there been any physical or psychological effects that you or anyone else, after experiencing a UFO or an encounter with an alien, have there been any reports of that?
As far as, like I said, I some of my reports happened years earlier, and I never reported those because I wasn't quite sure that they'd be reported or investigated honestly. Let's face it, when you experience these things, you're stunned and you're shocked, and you shut down. I mean, there are certain things that you look at and there are other things that you don't. It has a lot to do with your background, how open you are. And it sounds ridiculous. What I'm telling you does sound ridiculous because you're not supposed to be that way when you investigate it. But still, you still do experience that fear. And I haven't reported these cases, with the exception of maybe one or two of them. And one of the cases I reported, the people doing the investigation weren't very receptive of Bigfoot. And I caught a picture in the sky, and there are some in the group that looked at it and thought it was phenomenal, and there are others that didn't even want to look at it. And I was told they didn't want to hear about Bigfoot either. So I think what I'll do is I'll take off from here, if it's all right with you, and talk about the first one I've seen.
Okay.
Okay. I was in my early 20s when I saw this. I was married, and my husband and I had a very good marriage. It was really enviable with all of his friends. It was a beautiful evening, and we decided, we were housebound and wanted to get in the car, and we thought we'd go out and take a nice little drive at night. And we were actually in the town of Fullerton, California. And it was much smaller then, and we were reaching the edges of town, getting toward the rural area, and we turned off the main drag at that time, which was Orangethorpe. And we're driving shortly after that turn, and I said, "What's that?" "Well, hurry up, stop the car, pull over." And then we do, and then he was driving, my husband was driving, and he turned a U-ey, and so now after we turned the U-ey and we parked along the curb was on my side, the passenger side, and we saw this disc, and it was very easy to drive by this. because of the way it was lit. It was lit from underneath, and the lighting and the shadows caressed it all the way up to the top. And we watched this thing with the windows up and the doors locked. He did not want the windows down, and we had the doors locked for the same reason. And we were watching it for half an hour. And it was hovering above the ground at a second-story level because I had a building in the background for comparison. And there were grasses underneath it. We had a clock in the car. I kept glancing over at the clock regularly. I couldn't see any movement in this thing. What's interesting to note is underneath it. Now I know it had 4 lights underneath it, but I could only see 3 colors because the one closest to me, the edge of the craft was covering it from my view. And so I saw a blue, a red, and a green. And I'm thinking the other one may have been yellow. And when I look back in 13th century paintings and you see those little dots of light in the sky, it's like a cross, and they're the same colors. And if these lights were directly across from one another, it would show that same position that was in these 13th century paintings. And now that I reflect on it, those are the colors of the cardinal points. The craft was absolutely beautiful. I was mesmerized with its beauty. It had no rivets. It had no seams. It was flawless. And the shape, the beautiful art shape of it, the simplicity was really intriguing. And so finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I just couldn't take the quiet. I wanted to know more. I kicked the door open, ran out across the walkway, started to climb the chain-link fence, and then my husband was right behind me, and he put his hands in my back pockets and ripped me off the fence and said, "You're not going there," and he stuffed me in the car, and we took off. And so the next morning comes, and I fix breakfast, and he's sitting at the table, and he's just staring at his plate. And he's not mentioning anything. I think it's pretty peculiar, given how our relationship was and everything prior to this. And I said, "Do you want to talk about this?" And he said, "No, I'm never going to talk about it. Don't ask me again." And then he starts, I want you to know that with all these things, there is a behavioral change. And he starts telling me how easy it would be for him to kill me and how he would do it. And so, I leave that day. I get in the car, and I go down to look at that lot. And I don't see anything from my point of view. I'm ground level, though. From where I am, I don't see any marks on the ground, nothing. And when the craft was there, it was soundless, and I didn't see the grass move underneath it. So as we progress through this, he becomes very, very deviant, very heavily into pornography, very heavily into reconditioning and getting these very vile books and reconditioning your wife and redirecting her into something that is so diabolically evil. And I found those books in the closet. Meanwhile, he's calling other women and so forth, and at his work that have multiple partners, and tell finally, eventually, her things, he's calling her all the time, and her things start to move over to our house. In the meantime, I had a newborn baby. And while he was changing her diaper, he said the most horrible things about her. And it was a complete flip-flop in personalities for him. So finally, I get up at night, and he would work at night, and we had open weave drapes, and there would be someone in a car across watching inside the house. Oftentimes, like on paydays, I would bring him dinner and take my little daughter out to dinner. Though I had two, so she was older. I took him out. And then so I would bring him his dinner. Then finally he asked me not to bring him dinner anymore. And then I would get up in the middle of the night, and he would be gone. And he would, all the doors in the house would be open. And my parents and I became very concerned and thought I was being set up for something. So I left in the middle of the night and had the locks on my car changed, which was a good idea because I became employed, and then he came to steal my car, so I'd lose my job. I had no way to support my kids. So, okay, that was the first one with the behavioral change, okay? And then so later in life, I'd remarried, and I was working for local government, and then I decided, I would go to college. So I believe this was around my second year, and I was in a junior college. I was going to Riverside Junior College, and I was taking a class, biological psychology. And in walks the instructor. He's easily 6 foot and over likely. He had white blonde hair. He had blue eyes. He was built like an anvil. And he looked like he never worked out, but he was so powerful he could pick up a man from the front of the classroom and throw him all the way through the back wall. That's what he looked like. So anyway, we're in class, and he's talking about all of this medical stuff. And so when he's talking, I'm thinking questions. I'm thinking, well, everybody else must be doing the same thing. So I'm thinking these questions, and then he reels around. He looks at me directly, answers my question. And then I think another question. He does the same thing, only this time he walks up to my desk, and he kneels in front of my desk, and he looks at me directly in my eyes and answers the question. This goes on for a little while, and the students are freaked out because they don't hear me asking any questions. All they do is see him diverting from the material and answering questions to me. He does this with no one else. In the meantime, I'm getting these insane headaches, and and each time we communicated like this, the headaches were getting worse. I was only there a few days before I decided that I would drop the class. I just couldn't take the pain any longer. So I'm sitting in his class, and I'm thinking, I'm sorry, I have to leave your class. I can't continue this anymore. I don't feel well. And I hear his thoughts, that's okay. And I didn't want to hear that because I was getting so much information from him. Now, the information I was given isn't information that I can find anywhere today. And I talked to doctors regarding the information that I got, and they've never heard of such things. Okay? And then I was talking on the 11th to Charles James Hall. He gave a lecture, over here in Las Vegas. I was talking to him, and I was asking him if this person was a Nordic, can they engage in telepathy? And he said, no, they can't. He said, but they have, he said, neither can the Greys, but they have an electrical device, and that would enable them to do that. And he said, and that would explain your headaches. He said, what you're saying to me is credible. So I did that, and then after I withdrew from his class, I was going to another class of mine, and he was sitting in this quadrangle on a cement bench, and he really looked like he was out of place. And he was sitting all by himself, and then I hid behind a pillar, and I started thinking. And he turned direct toward that pillar that I was hiding behind, and I figured, well, I've been found out, so I came out behind the pillar and stood there, and he and I were communicating telepathically. So he takes his fingers, he digs them under the cement bench, and jettisons off the bench at full throttle at me. So he's running, and I take off running, and eventually, and he has really long strides, and I'm about Smurf-sized. And so, and we're blowing people out of the way. I mean, we're going through a crowd. It looks like something off of a crime movie. And people are screaming and telling us not to do that. And I'm trying to get away from this guy. I have no idea what his intentions are or who he is, really, because I figure that if he's in a college and he's seeing hundreds of people every day, he's looking for something. So anyway, I make my way to the staircase. I have to go down 3 flights of stairs before I can get out into the parking lot where my car is. So I'm halfway down the first flight of stairs. I turn around and I see that he's on top of the stairs. There's a cement planter on the top of the stairs, and he's standing on top of it looking down into the crowd. I found it really interesting that with the hundreds of people that were milling up and down, and I was stationary and he wasn't that far from me, he still didn't notice me. And that's when I realized he wasn't looking for me the way I actually looked, or physically. He was actually tracking my thoughts. So that's how he would identify me. So what I did is I just stopped thinking, left my mind blank, and let the other students' thoughts take over. And then I ran down the staircases, and got to my car. Now, it was 1 or 2 days later when there was a non-credited class being given by a psychic. And I thought, well, I've always heard about psychics, so, I would like to see one in action, and I'll go to this. So anyway, the woman, she was in there, and she had over 30 students, and she wrote something about everybody who was going to be at each and every desk, and something about them. And it was very personal. It wasn't ambiguous whatsoever, and she was on 100% with all of them. So she asked at the end of the class who could guess this or guess that, and I was one of the people that was able to know what she was thinking. So I went up. I was chosen along with 2 others, and she was going to give us a little reading. And then when she came to me, she backed up actually, and she said, I'm really, really afraid for you. Something is going to happen to you, and I think you're going to die. And I thought, well, why don't you tell me what it is? Maybe I can divert it. And so she said, I don't think you can. And she just left it at that, and she kept retracting. So I left, and I thought it was kind of peculiar. So I thought, the next day came around, I thought it was clear sailing, nothing happened. But the following day, my husband at this time volunteered to work nights, and he was gone. So we were having this, what seemed to be like an electrical storm. And I was really rattled. I mean, I've had been in lightning storms before. There was nothing like this. So, excuse me a minute. Anyway, I called my husband at work, and I said, I am absolutely terrified. I said, this storm seems like it's right on top of the roof. And he basically said, chin up, you have to carry on. And I said, you don't understand. This is different. but no, he wouldn't come home. And and I held up my phone and I said, "You have to hear this." And there was this zzz noise, and it kept going on, and the walls in the house were electrified. My children were at their father's at this time, and the walls were vibrating. I was afraid to touch anything in the house. So I hung up the phone, and I went over to a window that was in the that I could look out of that showed the front of the house, and above me the ceiling was open. It was like an atrium in there, and I could see bolts of lightning shoot out, but they didn't shoot down to the ground. They shot out in a radius, and they were as big as any antique beam in a large structure. They were huge bolts shooting out in a radius. So I'm looking out of the window, and I'm just so afraid because I remember the warning of the psychic. And I look across the street, and I see this little triangle-looking thing, and that's because the drapes are being pulled apart. And I see my neighbor's head on the window ledge, and I don't see his body. And he's kneeling on the ground with his head just on the window ledge, looking at my house. And I'm thinking, what in the hell is he doing? So next thing I hear is this great big kabang, and the door slams open. He's running across the street practically with his knees up to his chin, bangs on my door, and I'm already there. I already see him run across the street, so I open it. And then he said, "There's a lightning storm." And I said, well, I said something smart alecky, like, duh. And he said, you don't get it. You just don't get it, Jeannette. He said, it is right on top of your house. And he said, it's not touching the roof, but it's just right on top of it. And he said, it's only on your house, nowhere else. And then he runs back across the street, slams the door, and assumes the same position he had before. Well, finally, the lightning stops, and I'm so relieved you can't imagine what my heart rate was. And then the next night, my kids are back, and then I'm in my nightgown and I'm studying. I'm on the couch that has the window there that I looked out of originally, and I look through the open weave drapes to the other side of me, and we have a glass door there too. We had a couple glass doors, and my daughter's there with me. And I said, "Do you see anything outside those drapes?" And she said, "Mom, a man's watching us." And what it was that there was a beam of light in the background and a circle of light, and a man was standing in it. And still, we're at the point where Charles Hall says this is all completely credible. So anyway, I take the lights and I douse them in the house. I grab my kids, and we have a lot of glass in this house. And I go bring them behind the kitchen cupboard, because that was my optimal place to be, because it blocked most of the windows that we had. And I used the walls and everything there to my advantage. The one thing I was concerned about were the appliances, because they're shiny, and I didn't want our reflections to be caught and bounce back into the window that were above the cupboards. Well, anyway, this guy, or whatever he was, figured out where we were. So he goes around, and there's another glass door there, and he starts trying to get in, and the glass door is rattling, and I there's a phone there, so I grabbed the phone and I called the cops, and they were out in minutes. And they saw no trace of anyone being there. None. And then after, I got to flip some pages here. And then after we do this, we're seeing all kinds of anomalies happen. Like I had an end table with a lamp on it. The end table alone weighed 50 or 60 pounds, and not counting the pottery lamp on it. And that we found that had walked out into the hallway one night, and we could see the impression in the carpet where it moved from. And then I would do little things, like I would try and do the things that I used to do, which would be either regress or advance the clock, which I did. And then I decided that I would try and break the formal dining room table. And then I thought about it for like a half an hour. And then I heard this loud pop, and I thought I did. I broke the table. And then I walked over to it. Didn't look like I did anything, but I looked at it the next morning when we had more light, and I broke the leg on it. And then there were other things that happened, like there was after all this and the furniture moving and stuff, my daughter and I were talking, and we turned and we saw on the ground a house-sized cat, but the house-sized cat was made out of blue light, and it had little pinpoints on it, like along the spine and different points down the legs and the head. And I don't know what that was. I don't know if that's the electricity going through a nervous system or what that is. But anyway, we watched it, and it rounded the corner and went down the hallway to where the rooms were. So we kind of turned the corner ourselves after we saw the cat go down there, and we didn't see anything. And then after that, and I had wonderful kids, just gorgeous. Everybody said, "Oh my God, what a beautiful family you have." So, my daughter would start screaming, and she said that a cat came out from underneath her bed, and it went on top of her bed. And by this time, the cat was huge; it was panther size. She said the cat was all black, and it had red eyes, and it would stare at her, and she'd had enough, and we had the crucifix in the room. We had the whole thing. Anyway, and she would go sleep with her sister. Well, that didn't do any good either, because now that they were together, the whole bed started shaking and vibrating all over the cotton picking room. And my dad was in the Navy, and years before, when I was a little girl, he got me this beautiful geisha doll. And on her right hand, she was holding up a samurai helmet, and she was all silk. Her face was all silk and all hand-painted, just gorgeous. Anyway, this doll really creeped me out because around midnight, I'd hear a bunch of noise on my dresser, and it was a doll, and it would start to wobble, and it would rotate around, and it would face the wall and would never look at me. Every night, the doll would do this, okay? So I put it away because it was so beautiful, and I brought it out, and I showed my daughter this doll. And I said, "What do you think?" Because I thought, it was just a child's mind, mine at the time. So she said, "I think it's beautiful. I'd like it." So, okay, we put it on a dresser. She said, "Mom, it makes noise. It turns around at night, and it won't look at me." So anyway, we had that issue. So we took that and we threw it in the trash, okay? And then, let me look here at my notes. And then I got a bed warmer, an early American bed warmer, and that's the thing you put charcoal in and you rub it over your sheets, and it was supposed to have warmed your sheets back in the day. And I had a decoration on it. It had a 5-point star. Well, I'm just thinking I'm the ordinary person. So it didn't make any difference which way I hung it, because I hung it with the point down, because it was more aesthetic in the room that way. Okay? After I hung the bed warmer up in the room, this is a new housing tract, I might add. It's a new housing tract, and we all have beautiful, brand new, strong wood fences. Okay? And then a few streets, or a couple streets over, there was a dog, and I think the fences were like 1x4s, something like that. And the dog went Wally. I could hear it barking from my house, and it tore down its fence. It ran across that street and then went into the street in back of us. It broke down. We had a home in back of us. It broke down the front portion of that fence also. Now we're at two fences. It ran through the backyard as if it was mad, and it, I think I already said it tore down their front fence, and then it ran through the backyard, and the fence that it went through was the fence that divided their house and our house. It shot through the fence. Now these boards didn't look like the nails had been pulled out and they were pulled down. There was a hole in the fence. Okay, and then I'm out in the yard at this time, and it runs after me for everything it's worth, and I slammed the glass door just in time. So it broke down. It went through 3 fences. And then after I shut the door, it just stayed there for a while, and then turned around and went back the way it came. So, and then we had, so I really wasn't sure if there was craft above my home, but the neighbor would never talk to me again. I'd wave to him and say, "Hi, how are you?" And he'd turn around and he'd look over his shoulder real quick and ran into his house and slammed the door and drew the drapes every day until he sold it. Okay? And I would imagine by his behavior he saw more than lightning above my house. But I never got the chance to ask him. After this, my husband started drinking heavily. My children became animals. My daughter cut her eyelashes off. They took food from the refrigerator and ground it into all of the linen in the beds. They took chemicals out of the medicine cabinets and painted the house with the chemicals. They started stealing from stores, prolifically lying, and and I had so many psychological issues with one daughter that we took her to a psychologist, and he wasn't making any headway with her. He thought she might be a sociopath, but he actually wanted to take her and put her in a hospital for some time so he could observe her. So I refused to have this done, and I still have nightmares about that house today. And our house was in the process of being sold. It was sold, but, there's the paperwork and all that other stuff. And so my neighbor came over, a different neighbor, and he was very sullen, knocked on my door and had his head down. And he said, "Jeannette, when you sit down, I need to talk to you about something." And I never shared any of this stuff with him. I don't know if he was home that evening. I never talked to him, anything. But anyway, he came over and he said, he said, when we were looking at these homes, he said there was only a couple left. He says there was yours and there's the one I bought. And he says, I walked in here and I liked it and everything, but there was something that wasn't right. something that told me to leave, and I did. And with the beams up there, and this is not a religious man. Okay, he had his issues, but anyway, he said, "Have you ever noticed that when you walk into the house, the shadows of those beams, it makes a cross, and the cross is upside down. But when you leave the house, the cross is right side up?" And I said, I never noticed that. And so it wasn't too much longer after that we left. So now you see the trail of two behavioral issues, okay? And so anyway, we leave, and we haven't bought a new place yet. We're looking for something smaller anyway, and we were just waiting. So as part of our layover, we decided we'd go rent an apartment. And it was really nice. It was a beautiful place, and had beautiful streams running through the complex and around our apartment, gorgeous landscaping, everything. It was in a beautiful hilly area, very desirable, not too far from the Santa Ana River. And we went in there, and I thought it was my imagination, but I went over and stood by the fireplace, and I didn't like it too much. I felt very tense, and I actually felt like taking something and throwing something at the fireplace. And I thought, well, geez, I must be in a mood. So anyway, I completely ignored it when I turned around and looked at everything else. I mean, it was just too fantastic. So we took it, and we went in there and decorated it, and we're pretty happy, and got a new little kitten, and everything seemed to be going really good. And so what happened is that, this was such a mess earlier, and I'm trying to make heads or tails of everything. And so I'm still going to school. Excuse me a minute. And so I, in the course of my studies, I joined a secret society. And it's a at-home course, and they send you little booklets, and you read so much, and you take these little tests, and you do what they ask you to do, and so forth and so on. And one of these things, they ask you to do these different things, and after you read them, you report what happened after you do it. So it didn't seem like anything much. So I did it, and I was in the process of doing this, and I was dressed to go to sleep. I had a very heavy satin nightgown on, and it was flannel lined. And everybody else was about ready to bed down, and I thought, well, I'll just do this when the house is quiet. And so I had a candle burning, a white candle, and I wasn't asked to do this, but I did it anyway. I had a double terminated crystal on the table, and it was wrapped with a silver band with a cabochon garnet on top. So anyway, as I'm getting into this, I noticed the flame on the candle rose about 1 foot or so. It wasn't under 1 foot. No breaks in the flame, and the flame, if I moved left, the candle would follow me, just like a compass needle. It would point to me. And a wind came in the room. We had all the windows shut. It was a new building. It was pretty secure and sealed. And a wind came through the room and was blowing my gown so forcibly that the bottom of it was flapping against the couch, and it showed my form. And I heard this noise over in the corner of the room, and it was very, very loud, and it sounded like I had my head in a beehive. And that's what they say about some UFOs, that they make this humming sound. Well, okay, this was over. Oh, the ritual was over. I thought it was a ritual. It was more than that. But anyway, it's over, and then I report, what I should. And all I get is this minuscule little answer that's saying, I said, what is this? And they said, oh, it's the sounds of the universe. And I'm thinking, what universe are you in? Because you can bring up recordings of Saturn and, different planets and what they actually sound like. This didn't sound like that. This sounded like a reported craft. So anyway, that's done with, and so I continue with my studies. And I notice above my where I have my book on the dining table, the chandelier starts swinging. And then I see 3 shadow people to my right, and I can actually feel the vibration on the floor with them rustling by, and I can actually see the carpeting depress under them. And so they're running by, but the thing is, when I'm doing my studies, I'm looking for synonyms and so forth and so on because I'm writing a paper, and all of this vocabulary, all these words that I didn't know previously, I now know. And I'll say, what word should I use there? And they'll say, and I heard that in my head, I'll use this one, I'll use that, I'll use this. I looked them up, and they made perfect sense. That's how I got such a voluminous vocabulary, was through this. And I started writing down all the stuff, and so other things were happening in the house. We were getting these awful smells, urine smells, and then I had a trillion cut. I don't know how big a carat ring I had, and it had this amethyst ring. It was huge, and it had a diamond in it, and it was wrapped in gold leaves. And I was reading that, the amethyst was a stone of kings. It was a prophetic stone, and would tell them when danger was near, and it would say that the color would leave it. And I thought that was ridiculous, But anyway, I just took it in stride. And so I happened to look in my jewelry box, and I did not recognize the ring. The ring was colorless, had no color. Okay, and then I go to school, and I'm ready to get in an elevator, and my hand is on the frame of the elevator, and there's this man there. He's a paraplegic, and he's in a wheelchair. And I don't know if he had a dream about this or what, but he looked at the ring, and he looked at me, looked at the ring, looked at me, and he was terrified, and he backed out of the elevator. And a lot of other things were going on with this at this time too. I decided, with all the smells and so forth, to go to a metaphysical church. And the pastor, was it was a very unusual sermon that day. He said, I went out and it was a metaphysical church, but it was more a Unitarian church, but they covered metaphysical material. Anyway, he said, and when he's talking about the story, he's just zoning. He's just staring off into space because I know that he's envisioning what he's talking about. He said, I drove out into the desert, and he said, I saw something crashed in a bunch of rocks over there. He said, I get out of my car, and I go there, and he said, there's these 3 gray little beings, and they have these big black eyes. And he paused, and he said, I don't remember anymore. And then it was over, and it was customary to, at the end, to go up and shake his hand, and everybody else shake each other's hand. And so when I went up there and he touched me, I almost hit the ground because his eyes turned completely black. And then I was quite rattled, and a woman grabbed me from behind and held my arms. I was pushed against the wall. He came from behind me, and he took both hands. He didn't touch me, but he ran his hands up and down within inches of my spinal column. That was the last time I went to that church, but while I was going to that church, I was talking to a woman that was a counselor, and she didn't have a dog. She had a wolf in her house, and it was her pet. And that dog, I was streets away before arriving to her house. That dog or wolf went nuts because it knew I was coming. So she had to lock it up, and we had classes at her house. And she was trying to teach us and guide us through meditation how to take our astral body out of our physical body. And so we're going through this guided meditation, and she made a comment about my aura. She said, "I've never seen anything that powerful in my entire life." And then she said that when I left that evening, she said the candle she had burning, because she believed in burning a candle because she believed that the flame would burn off negativity in a room if anybody brought any with them in her house. And she said, when I left, there were marks in the candle that were getting carved into the candle. I asked her what they were. She wouldn't tell me what they were, but you could see how she was acting physically when she was telling me this stuff. So it wasn't real good. So anyway, what I found out, or what I surmised later on, what I was doing wasn't a ritual. Actually, I was going through an initiation. And the smells and stuff continued in the house. There was a big orb that appeared over a bed. It was blue, and it took up the entire width of the queen-size bed. My cats noticed it first, my daughters, and then my husband. My husband called me over and said, "You've got to see this." They all stood in the doorway, and then when I got there, I saw it for a brief moment, and then it just popped out of sight. We had doorways open up in the house from left to right, as if you were tracing one with your finger. And we didn't have these colors at the time, but I see them now, and the best comparison I have for them is an LED light. And this was bright green, very clear, clean color. And then it opened up once in our bedroom, but it kept opening up in my kids' room, and it would trace around their closet door, and they said a woman would come in, and the woman had a long flowing blue gown and long brown hair, and she would come in and she would leave, and when she would leave, then the door would close, the light would go out from right to left in the opposite way. And she one day, a separate day in the house, she was looking at a cabinet through the glass we had, and she said, there's a woman in there with a long blue dress and long brown hair. And she goes, "Mom, is that you?" And I said, "Well, it's not me. I'm standing right here next to you." She said, "No, that's you." And I wrote some research I did in my book about a time when it's called multiple intersecting worlds, and that a person is alive but in different dimensions at the same time. So, and then later on, after I wrote my book, I I talked to this woman that was about 150 miles from me in the next town over, and I told her I wrote this book. She hadn't read it. I didn't tell her anything about myself or anything. And she said, I need to talk to you. I need to get drinks. She grabbed my arm and she ushered me off to a remote place in the bookstore. And she said, and she said, I live at, okay, and I'm undisclosing that, but she said, and then she said, my property is rural, and she said, I have a shed out there in the back. She said, but this doorway keeps opening up, and it traces from left to right, makes a doorway. It is bright green, and things go in and out of it. I said, is it okay if I talk to you later on about this and get more information? She said yes. She refused to return any of my phone calls after she gave me her number. So anyway, there was that, and then more on this house. Let's see. I was taking a shower, and this white orb. It was probably close to softball size. Came around the shower curtain and went up to my face, and I thought my husband was fooling around with a flashlight or something because I was washing my hair and had soap suds all over, and I finally cleared my eyes and saw the orb, and it went back around the corner. I took we also, all of us, found an entity in the house, and I described it, what it looked like, because I can get my hands near something. I can tell you what it looks like, height. I can tell you characteristics of things that are there. People can't see. So I took a double terminated crystal and I put it in our restroom. And I picked it up one day and it was black. And I thought that was weird. It was clear. And I brought it out into sunlight and it captured the image of this thing. Now it was a man. And he was a smoker. He smoked cigars. He was an older man, and he wore a sports jacket. And that image was in the crystal, okay? And then I'm in the process of burning what's called a reversal candle. And that is supposed to reverse the situation in the house. So the house has to be really quiet, and it's kind of tough because my husband is getting more agitated and throwing almost like tantrums all the time and stuff like that. So what else is happening? Anyway, I'm burning the candle, and you have to pray for 7 days. So many prayers, certain times, so forth and so on. It's a whole regimen. So anyway, I'm burning the candle, and I have it in this oversized glass ashtray. It looks like a really beautiful glass dish. It's glass and silver. So anyway, the candle's burning in it, and it burnt down, and I'm still talking to this woman from this church that was trying to give me the lessons or trying to teach me stuff. And then so she said, well, have you looked at the candle? And I said, no, I haven't. So she said, take the candle out to the light and you tell me if you see anything. So I take it out in the light, and clear as day, without anything left to the imagination, as if someone had pressed a signet ring into wax. There was an image of a reptilian. The reptilian but the face was elongated to look like a crocodile. It had round little ears on top of its head, very sharp fangs filling its mouth, had a thick throat, had scales all over it. She said, take that thing and throw it in the trash outside in a dumpster so they take it away from your house. Before I had to back up because I'm not looking at my notes, but anyway, before I I get that image. I felt at one particular point in time, because I'd been praying for help, and I felt incredible peace, perfect love, perfect everything, almost as if the ideal, if Christ was standing there, and I'm feeling so comforted, and about this time, my husband starts screaming, and he's shaking me, and I'm very difficult to wake up, but he's shaking me. He's terrified because about a foot to a foot and a half off of my body, covering the entire length and width of it, was a white cloud, and it was just floating there. And he was terrified, but I, on the other hand, was comforted. And so anyway, it looks like at this particular point in time, my husband's just getting worse, and it looks like he's having a dalliance. So I had a little owl clock on the wall, and I knew, things are coming to an end, because the owl clock stopped on the 6th day, on the 6th month, and on the 6th hour. And then, so anyway, we take, and things are coming through, and we got another place to live. And I'm cooking dinner in the kitchen. We got a little 2-bedroom condo, and so everybody's sitting on the couch and waiting for dinner, and they're watching TV. So all of a sudden, I see, and through the light on the ceiling, the top light, 3 orbs came through, and they go up, and they go past me, and they briefly hesitated before they went down the hall, and they raced down there, and they went into our bedroom. And I asked my husband, "Did you see that?" And he goes, "Yeah, I did." I said, "Ask the girls." No, they didn't see it. So anyway, I go in the bedroom, and I said, "Hi, whoever you are." So anyway, I came back, and we finished up and everything. And so we started to have issues. We had a cat, and we had a very large, beautiful beveled mirror, all framed in oak, above our couch. And then the cat would hiss and lay low and be terrified, and would follow something around in the mirror, and would go hide under our bed and couldn't even pick her up. So this would go on a lot. And I went in the bathroom, and given the orbs that came in and the weird behavior of the cat and everything, I started to say, my husband was in bed, and I started to say some prayers. Well, I had my own space in the bathroom, so I just thought I'd be quiet in there and started to say prayers. Well, underneath the door where feet would be, there were shadow feet under the door, and the door started flexing, and the doorknob started moving back, right to left, right to left, right to left. And it got more intense the more I prayed, so I stopped praying, and it stopped, period. The door just stopped moving. And then the kids became extremely defiant. One of them was engaged in sexual activity in the public with neighbors watching and telling me about it. I started to have really strange dreams at night, like I was flying out of the window, and I was very, very cold, extremely cold. And that also happened in that other place too. We noticed temperature drops and the light in the house getting darker and darker. But okay, coming back to this story. But and then I was so cold, and I kept trying to make a conscious effort to wake up. Well, I couldn't do it for a while, but one night I woke up. I tried very hard to open my eyes. I could think, but I couldn't open my eyes. But this time I was successful, and I just flashed them open. And to my left, from my knee down to my ankle, is where a gray was standing. It was taller gray, not the real tall ones, but taller than the other two. The other two were at the footbed, and their head was barely above the queen size footboard, and they had an expression on their face almost of glee, and their heads were like popping up and down a little bit, like excitedly. And the gray on my left was shocked when I opened up my eyes, but I could barely keep them open for very long, and I just was gone. And then we had in the bedroom a rabbit statues, ceramic rabbits, and God, this is so hard for me to talk about this. Anyway, when the rabbits I get up the next morning, and the rabbits rotated around to look out of the window, like where I left to. I often think about Easter Island that way. Are they facing where something left? But anyway, and each night that this happened, the rabbit would turn and would face that direction that I remember going out of the window. And then, let's see, one of the times I remember being taken by by these grays, and I was brought, and there was this I don't know, because it's so emotionally involved. This woman that I thought was some Nazi German woman, mean, very mean, and in a whitish kind of coat, like a lab coat. She was asking me all these questions about my personality and my motives, and she was very accusatory. And I said, no, I did that because of this. And basically she calls me a liar. Well, no, you're doing this because of that. I said, no, I'm doing that because of this. And she didn't believe me. And some things were done to me because she didn't believe me. And she put me in a position of humiliation. Not even going to go there, which she did. Because I tried to, I'd had it with her, and I made a move to just beat the shit out of her, really. And that's when she did this. And so I said, there'll be another time, and I'll take you down next time. So anyway, that happened. But anyway, on the third night this happened, my husband came to wake me up to go to work the next morning. He walks over on my side of the bed, and he looks down at the carpet, and he said, the carpet's frozen. I go, what are you talking about? I mean, I knew I was cold, but yeah, the carpet, look at the carpet. It has frost all over it, thick frost. And when you walked on the carpet, he left his footprints behind. He melted the frost. And so these things are not only gray showing a lack of light, and I think they're evil. I hate grays. And that close association with what happens with ghosts, because the rooms get cold. The rooms get cold with these little boogers too. And course, and then they show up in threes. In case you don't know it, oftentimes things are done to mock the Trinity, but then again, there's also an inverse Trinity. There's a black Trinity as well. So anyway, so that morning with the frost there, I'm trying to, and he leaves the room, and I can't get up, and I'm looking in the room, and everything that can move is moving. We had silk plants and all that stuff in the room, and all the petals and leaves and branches on all of these things were moving in a clockwise let me do this. In a clockwise direction. And I was watching everything move, and I still couldn't get up. And then so the door opens. It's him, chicken that he was. He looks at everything moving, and he leaves, and he closes the door with me in it. So finally, everything stops moving, and when it stopped moving, I was able to get up and get ready to go to work. So, but we had other things. Wait a minute. I took a picture of my daughter, my youngest daughter, in there, and she just had ectoplasm coming out of her in mass amounts. I mean, it was huge. And then I started to get ill. I had to have a major surgery. And then I got a job, and I lost it because I started to feel like bad again. And then I needed another major surgery after that. And then we had these invasion of the insects in there. And this was a new complex too. These condos were new. And I started feeling something really weird in my hair. And I had these bugs, and I turned around, and they were crawling on the couch, and it started in little bunches here and little bunches there, and then they were on the fireplace, and they were on the walls, and then we went to bed at night, and they were in the bed, and they were in the fitted sheet in between where the elastic is and the sheet. You wouldn't think there would be any room there, and they were. I would pull out my clothes, and they would be between my underwear and where the elastic was sewn on the leg part. I could hear them rustling. They would be in every piece of clothing I had. I had vector control figured out, and they were called cinch bugs, and they looked like a small fly. And I was hurting so bad from the surgeries. I wanted to go to a motel, but my husband was going to work, and he refused. I had to stay there with the bugs. And my husband, at this particular point in time, he was a probation officer. And he started to get into cocaine heavily, and it got to the point where he was, I believe, because I waited for him at his office. He'd stay there late at night waiting for a drop, and then he would scream at night that he was being raped by other men. And I think he had to compromise himself to get these drugs. So anyway, as you can see, when these things enter your life, good goes out the window. So, and then we left because we lost our home because of his drug habits. My children left to go live with my ex. My whole family broke up, and then I didn't have any place to go really because I was still in school and I wasn't working. And so, well, wait a minute. I think I was close to graduation. It was really close right in there. And then we moved to back to the apartment complex we used to live in just for a brief moment. I got a decent job having gotten out of school, and then what happened there? And then so when I had something else went wrong with me, I went to the hospital. I couldn't heal, and so I was bleeding internally. So the doctor had to take his knee and shove it into me, and I had a stream of blood go down my leg all the way down to my ankle because he was trying to drain me out. And then he had to cauterize the wound, and then I was put into a harness to restrict the blood flow. And then I go home, and then he goes, I think you'll make it. We're done. So I hit the streets. I tried to find an apartment with no money because I was told by his attorney that he was an extremely dangerous man. And so I really left with nothing, all ripped up. And then he couldn't even identify his own clothing when I left him. Okay. And then we go on to the next thing. I had been living by myself for a while. We were in an apartment. I was in an apartment, and I was still associating with a different secret school this time because I'm really looking for answers, and I'm finding them. I'm finding the answers, which was why I stayed with them. So anyway, I go there. I go to a metaphysical store, and this woman follows me out of the store. And she said that she is a watcher, and it was her job to watch me specifically. And she told me that I've always been loved by someone on the other side, and he was a fearsome warrior. And he wasn't really a particularly good guy. But anyway, he would come to me really soon and would possess the body of a much younger man. And he wanted to be with me soon. So it's weird because within 2 weeks I met somebody. He came into my life, and we had a blast. It helped me mentally recover from all the trauma. It took my mind away from it, from everything I've been through. And then pretty much left the same way. I could tell when it was over. All I had to do was just look in his eyes, and I knew whatever it was gone. And then, let's see, what else happened? Third marriage. This one I talked or tried to talk to, communicate with an archangel. I did an invocation ritual because I wanted to meet the right person. And so I met this person, and it was really interesting how they came into my life as a result of this. But anyway, he and I are married now, and this was in 2013, and we're up the highway. I think they call them in Oregon because they have stoplights, so they call them highways. Anyway, we're up there. We're going up north in Oregon, and we're going to the Heceta Head Lighthouse. And we're taking one of these little, excuse me, my dinner doesn't like me tonight. Anyway, we go up there and we're done and we have a good time and I'm coming back and I'm driving and I said, well, hey, look, there's the beach. Let's just go down there and see what that's like. Check that out and everything. So we do, and we're having a good time, and we have our cameras, and I'm out photographing, and then so I pointed up, and we're by this really large bridge. I look up there, and I said, I'm just quiet for a while, and he's still taking pictures. I go, will you look at that? Look up. And it's kind of a white day. Sky's a little white, and it's not a good day to take pictures. And we're looking up there, and I said, do you know how big that damn thing is? Look at that. And that we saw a fish cracker-shaped craft. So I take a picture, and I'm not seeing anything on my camera, but and it's a very, very windy day. And the area is infamous for its winds. And at the lighthouse back in the day, they used to have lines between buildings to keep people from being blown away, because you had to hang on to the line to make it from one building to the next. Okay, so this is a windy day. And I look up, and this craft, whatever it is soundless, and it's not moving whatsoever. So anyway, we come home, and I'm still driving, and I want you to know that when we go through these things, my husband acts very peculiar. Something happens to him. I don't know what it is, but something happens to him. And then I'm telling him, my God, I'm blind. And he said, what? And I said, I can't see out my window. I said, I can't see anything. I can see out your window, but I can't see out my window. I'm totally freaking blind. And I had the wipers going. I'm wiping the inside of my window. I've lowered my window, but when I look out to my left on my side with the window down, it's still the same thing. I can't see anything. And the coastline is really rugged and has really quick whip-like curves on it. It's almost like a sidewinder, And so anyway, and he looks at me and he says, "Well, just don't worry about it. You'll be fine." I'm like, "What? I'm completely blind." I said, "There's the cliff," and he slumps down in his chair and he goes to sleep. I'm like, oh, what the hell, anyway, I'm trying to. So what I did is that I kept my window down, and I'm like, I'm hearing everybody else, and nobody's crashing. Everybody else must see but me. I don't see. I can't see. And so I have my window down, and I'm navigating totally by sound. How far the sound sounds away from my car. And I have to keep that sound even so I don't go off the cliff to my right. And I navigated like this for a very long way. And I kept wiping my hands on my pants because I'm sweating on the wheel. And I don't want to lose the steering wheel in all of this. But anyway, I drive a long way like this. And all of a sudden, quick as you please, the window is clear. So, anyway, we get home, and I said, I got to turn on the news. Just hurry up, get in the house. I'm not doing anything. Just turn on the news. And right away, the announcement comes on the news that a UFO was spotted in the same area that we were in. And then shortly afterwards, another UFO was spotted in Northern California, but that was, I'm sure, was a drone. I mean, I have a picture of it. It looks ridiculous. It has it almost looks like a puffer fish. It has all these little antennas all over it and everything. So that was a drone. But this was a fish cracker thing, and it looked whitish, and the only way I could see it in my photograph was to change the mid-tones, and it turned the sky pinkish, and then it's more salient. And I was talking to Richard Dolan about it, and he asked me to send him a picture of it. So I did, because he has a picture also of a fish cracker type craft, he told me. So anyway, that's it on that one. Then I have, wait a minute. Oh, yeah. Oh, this one's really creepy, too. We moved to Oregon. How are we doing on time?
Oh, we got about 29 minutes.
It ain't gonna get done. So.
Well, we'll probably have to do a part 2.
Okay. I'm telling you. Excuse me. I'm just about out of water here. Anyway, so I'm looking at trying to retire and trying to afford being able to retire, and so we know we can't do it in California. So anyway, I got this property some time ago, and sight unseen. Although I investigated as much as I could on the computer and so forth and so on, and we moved. We went out to go look at it for the first time. And then a guy showed us around the property that was familiar with it, and he was part of the sales process and so forth. And we go out there, and then we find this deer skin on the ground. It was all dressed out and everything. And then we go past the property onto the lot next door, more in the northern corner. And then we see this one-piece stone, and it's about up to a little bit past my waist, and I'm like 5'3", and it would hold it fairly flat on top, and it would hold an average man, the length of him, and with his arms outstretched. So anyway, I didn't say anything, and my husband doesn't read the stuff I do, and I really kind of afraid to tell him stuff because he just, I don't blame him. I mean, he just gets too freaked out. So anyway, he's standing there, and he goes, "Jeannette, this is an altar." I'm like, oh my God, even you can see that. So anyway, and the stone is highly polished. It's a one-piece, highly polished stone. So I'm thinking, okay, let's be like the rest of Western society and just make up some little fantasy story or just think, only good, happy thoughts. So instead of being a realist, there's a big line between being a realist and an optimist. So anyway, so we come out of there, and we're really into it at this point, up to our eyeballs. I'm again the point where I sold the place I had. We've invested in this property, and we're just going. So anyway, we see that, and we take, and then we go back home, and then we get ready to start moving on the property and so forth and so on. Well, my husband is still working out there, and I decided to proceed and have the house built and everything myself, and got the contractor, and just happily went nuts trying to do that. And then, but I get out there, and the house, just basically like the frame and all that kind of stuff we had a manufacturer put in. And so we're there, and then what happens? Right away, what happens? I get visited by a black unmarked helicopter. Okay? And I'm thinking, I don't know what these things are at that point in time. And I'm like, what are you doing here, man? Buzz off. So anyway, the helicopter stays there 45 minutes to an hour. It either circles the house or it goes in front of my bedroom window, which I went out and gave him the freeway salute for a while. And the helicopter comes every single day for 3 months, does the same thing while the house is getting built. And I'm thinking, in retrospect now, that the government knows about the phenomena that's happening there. And they're in cooperation with it, or collaboration. That's exactly how I feel right now. But anyway, the helicopter is going around, and it got to the point where at the end of the 3 months, there was another tiny little helicopter that came up, and it very tiny, and had 2 men in it. One guy was dressed in khakis, and he tries to get his leg out. He's making like, "Hi, I'm your best friend," and I'm standing on the front porch of the rifle, and I'm giving him the sign, "Move on, boy." So he put his leg back, and they sped off, and I never saw him again. But during all this, there are little things that happen within that 3-month period. And so when it got to the point when I could be in the house, I had no furniture or anything. I mean, I had a lamp, something to sit on, stuff like that, and I had the TV. And I can only get one channel on the TV, and it was a funny one at that, so I pretty much enjoyed that. So anyway, I was having issues getting my furniture delivered and stuff. But I'm there, and we don't have security lighting on or anything. And you have to, if you can imagine this house in the middle of the Cascade, in the middle of a national forest in the Cascade Mountain Range at 5,300 feet, and looking in one direction for hundreds of miles, seeing nothing but trees, some water, stuff like that. There's nothing but you and the pumas and the bears, okay? And like I said, didn't have any security lighting, so I'm watching TV, and I didn't have my weapons with me at that time. They didn't come in till later when I met the guy with the helicopter. But anyway, I'm there, and I'm the glass door to my left. I'm hearing. Well, not there. I'm not there yet, but I'm hearing on the ground. I'm hearing these footsteps, bipedal, extremely heavy, on the cement slab. And it was as if, really, someone had a sledgehammer and wrapped the sledgehammer in terry cloth just so you didn't hear the clink. But if you were to land that thing down with motivation, that's what the footsteps were very much like. They were very heavy. And it was thumping around on the slab. So I have a flashlight with me too, but anyway, and then I'm thinking, what the hell is that? And then I hear this hand slapping on the glass door. And it's funny because I'm standing up in the house, and I have blinds in that one window, the verticals, and it apparently knows where I am because it put its hand up where my face would be, and it slapped the the glass door, and I hope you're catching this. It slapped the glass door 3 times. I've said 3 quite a few times in here. The 3 orbs, the 3 grays, there's the 3 for probably, I'm guessing, the Infernal Trinity, and because now we're talking about that these grays are just maybe they're not quite aliens. They're like an interdimensional being that are maleficent. So anyway, I'm hearing these 3 hand slaps, and I got barely looking through the lats, and I'm trying to use some light, and but everything's getting reflected back at me, and I don't see anything, and I don't dare open that door with something that big. So anyway, odd things like this had been going on in the house, and so here I am. I'm getting the black helicopters, and I'm getting this. So anyway, I did a purification on the house, Indian style, and I'm out in the front yard, and I got the hose, and I'm just watering down the walkway and trying to do some cleanup out there. And I see this image coming toward me, and it is a puma. But the puma looks like a hologram. And I can see when it presses down on its paws, you can see the paws spread out when the weight was released onto the paw. And it was very placidly walking up to me, totally disappeared within 10 feet. And with the black helicopters and all this stuff going on out there, in retrospect now, I'm wondering, is this something real? Or is this maybe experimental area for Project Bluebeam? I don't know what the heck it is. And then throughout this time, or during this time, I went out and looked through my kitchen window, and I see this Sakara-shaped craft flying across. It doesn't seem to be going exceptionally fast. It just seems to be going as fast as you would see a passenger jet airplane going across the sky. The outer surface of it must have been irregular because the way it reflected light didn't look like a real clean piece of metal. So I can see that it was silvery looking. And then I figured, well, at the speed that it's going, I should just be able to walk across to the next room and see it out that window. It ought to be there because I'm pretty good at that. If I hear sound, I can tell the beginning part of the sound and the ending part of the sound, meaning the front and the back of the object. I can tell where things are. So I go over there at the other window, and it's gone. And I look out in the sky, and our sky is big, open, and clear, and there's nothing. And then throughout this whole thing, within a certain month of the year, I'm trying to remember the month. I think it was, April. I think it was April, or it could have been June, but April. I'd walk out in the snow, and when I'd walk out in the snow in April, there was one tree knock, and it would come from the direction where the altar was. And that happened every year for the first 3 years. But what I didn't mention was that after we moved into the home, the altar was gone. Now I was leaving, but I can't imagine how many tons that one stone was, but it was completely gone. So anyway, I get the hand slapping at the property and all that stuff, and so what happened now, off and on, these other little things happen. I would see I would hear the noises outside the house, and then on the and I want to make a point that yes, the helicopters circled the house, but when they were stationary, they would either go to the master bedroom window or they would go on one wall in particular. And that one wall, as it turns out in the future, we have all kinds of paranormal activity happening on that side of the house. But anyway, I'll hit that later. But right now, we had these stem sprinklers, and the stem was about a foot long, close to it, and it would be unscrewed, and whatever unscrewed it would lay it down right next to where they unscrewed it. Very neat, but they'd lay it down. And then I'd find only one time I found these big shoeless prints walking to the lot next door toward the altar. That was one and only time I did. I didn't quite know about Bigfoot then or anything. So, needless to say, when I was being subjected to all this stuff, I started looking into things. And then we had on the lot next door to us. Okay, now a lot of these things, in my opinion, have to do with energy consumption and gathering. And they take energy any way they can, and so what happens is I'm extremely sensitive to electromagnetic energy, and I felt this one evening like I was being asked to get out of bed, not asked but told to get up, go, something's here. And I'm thinking, you're in bed and you're all cuddly and it's freaking freezing out. And you're like, oh, man, come on. No, get up, go. So I get up and I'm like, what is it, So anyway, I'm looking around the house and I'm irrational and I go to the front door first, because you're kind of like comatose when you get up. And I go to the front door and I'm thinking, what am I doing looking here? I should go where I feel that it is. So I just shut the front door. And I went over to the back glass door, and I'm looking around, and I feel it to my right, and I look there, and there it is. It's on the lot next door, and I'm not really the best guesser in the whole world, but I'm going to guess that it was probably maybe 100, 150 yards from me. I saw this orange orb, and it was, I later measured it, so because I could kind of see through it. It ends up being about 15 feet wide, and it's 21 feet off the ground. So anyway, I'm looking at it, and at the 2 o'clock and 7 o'clock positions, the coloring in the orb is different than the rest of the orb. It's much brighter and lighter. And they look like 2 pie slices in the orb, but the edges were jagged, and one side mirrored the other in its shape. And the orb had a hard edge to it. It had no light extending beyond the rim of the orb. When I sent it energy, it flared up, and then I stopped, and then it receded. And I'd send it again, and it would flare, and we'd play this little game back and forth. Originally, I got out of bed because I had a feeling. Don't want to say what that was, but it was looking for a particular type of energy, and it evoked that in me, and it maintained that in me, and it shouldn't have been that way. I had no dreams relating to this, but the feeling was there, and it induced it. And so that's why when I went over to it, I was sending its energy, I could see it flare and then again recede. I was debating what I should do. I was debating when I was looking at it, should I look around? Is there something else around it? But there could have been something else around it, but it was so bright that I couldn't see anything else around it. Everything else around it looked black. I wouldn't have been able to see anything. So I stayed there a while, hoping maybe I'll see something else. So I was trying to observe as much about it as I could, as much of its behavior as I could. And then I took a chance and I went to the other room and I got out my night vision, and it could not be seen in my night vision. And I talked to an engineer friend of mine, and he said that's because of the light frequency that it wasn't picking it up. I mean, your night vision can only see so much, and it wasn't getting that. And I didn't dare get my camera. I didn't want to miss anything else at the same time. So anyway, so I just started to, at that point, I just started to drop off. I just felt abnormally fatigued, drained. And then when I started to get that feeling, I still watched it a bit, and just as quick as you could snap your fingers, it turned white. And then, excuse me, it turned white, and then it sort of flickered on and off, and every time that it flickered on, you could see less of it. There were less pieces left. Until finally I could see maybe about 2/3 of the rim of it, and some of the pieces on the inside, and then it just flickered out one last time. Then I didn't have any instruments with me because the person that supervises me and stuff is really big on, we don't care what you feel, we don't care what you see, we just want it measured, we need tools, and so I didn't have any tools at the time. So, but anyway, finally when I started getting something in, I went out there with a Geiger counter and not a Geiger counter, a metal detector, and got nothing. And then, but I could feel electric current in the air for over 2 weeks afterwards. And when I went out there, I could feel all the hairs on my arms stick up. And what else happened? Oh, I felt it with my hands, and I could feel the perimeter of it. Something, I felt pressure, as if I would walk up to you and press on your back with my hands. There was something there that I couldn't see. There was a pressure there. There was something there, but yet I didn't have any the right stuff to document that. And then after that happened, we started getting a lot of Bigfoot-like activity happening. We got hand slapping on that same bedroom wall. That was let's see, what was that wall? That was the southeast wall. And it sounded in the yard like someone was taking crates and just throwing and trashing the entire area, but yet I get up in the morning and everything would be fine. And then when we're there and we're hearing these whistles, and they're not, a human being can't whistle like this, because the whistle was as strong from the beginning as when it ended, and we build up to a whistle, and this was totally different. And there were 3 whistles, 3, and then but before it whistled, it was like, it has a different kind of voice. It was like, I don't know how to describe it. It wasn't howling. It wasn't. I don't know if it was yelling out, but the voice was. You could detect a human quality in it, and then the sound of its voice was followed with a whole bunch of coyotes around it. We would have coyotes, one or two or whatever, but this was like a pack that was surrounded it. I've never heard that before there, but it was surrounding that calling out sound. And then it was later that we got the whistling, and then we got what happened? We're in. I gotta find my notes. Anyway, we're hearing some more noise, and I'm trying to wake up my husband, and I go, "Do you hear that?" And he said, "Yeah, it sounds really, really scary." And what happened is, there was this sound, and there was a lot of breath that was expelled, and it was very raspy breath before you could hear its call. But it actually felt like my head was laying on its chest. That's how close I felt. That it's so undescribable. It's like when you're close to someone and you put your head on their chest and you can hear their heartbeat. I could hear the breath coming out of their lungs, and I was like right on top of it. And he and I were carrying on a full conversation, and he asked me, "Can you move?" And I'm feeling really cocky, like, what are you asking me something stupid like that for? So I try to get up, and I can move my head up off my pillow from my neck, but I can't. I'm totally immobilized. And I tried several times. I couldn't, unstick my hands from the mattress. And I said, "Can you move?" He said, "I can't do it either. I can." I was looking at him move his head as much as mine, but neither of us can move. And that's not sleep paralysis. And I was wondering if that was the effects of that raspy breath, the infrasound that they're supposed to be able to do. Anyway, I go out there, and I later, and this is all pretty much unbelievable to me. And I go over to the side of the house, and on that southeast wall, and I find a footprint. And I don't have my paperwork here in front of me. It might have been 14 and a half inches long. It was half of that wide, so those don't even fall in the human range of measurements. So I'm pretty heavy, so I went out there and I stepped on the ground, same soil conditions. I left an impression of 1/4 of an inch or less. This was 2.5 inches deep, and I felt all the toes and where the ball of the foot or that area of the foot was, and the whole thing. And it was only the left foot print, which is getting to be pretty typical. And it said that they leave a left footprint before they move into another dimension. So anyway, so apparently the thing was right there, but it sure felt closer than that. And I go out and I do some more snooping around, and And about, I believe it was like 75 feet away, we had a chicken coop and stuff, and we had an outdoor yard for them that was fenced in with chicken wire and so forth. And I go look, and and it's the roof was as high as I could extend my hand. It was at wrist level, and it was over 6 foot wide, and throughout the entire length of that, it was just matted with a gray hair. And then, as typical, there was a rainstorm after it, washed all of it away, which is quite typical. As a matter of fact, the weather people have been checked and so forth and so on, and these Bigfoot sightings and so forth, and no rain is predicted. And they can't figure out why in the heck did we get a drenching like that when there wasn't any rain to be had. So anyway, as far as this other thing goes, as part of the stuff I send for, I send for an ovulus, and they're pretty interesting because I actually got to do some. I met Virginia Ridgway. She used to be the proprietor of the Goldfield Hotel, and she just doesn't let anyone in there. She let us in there. She said the spirits liked us. She let us use her ovulus for the first time, so that was my first exposure to one. So I got this thing, and I took it out of the box, and it was saying a bunch of nonsensical things. And then my husband pointed it to me, and it starts saying French woman. And then we bring it over the window, and it starts describing all of the land, that it was rough, rocky dirt, that there were trees outside. I bring it in the closet, and it'd say it was dark in there, all kinds of things. So it was making perfect sense. So, and I've used it later on, and I'll talk about later what it said about different things. But anyway, so I've been having all of these issues and stuff with relationships after seeing these things. So anyway, my husband is he's working nights. He's driving truck, and so he would call me in the morning to say good morning to me. But this night, I was having what I thought was a dream, and I'm in bed, and I, for no apparent reason that I was aware of, probably was very subconscious, but on a conscious level not. So I just sat up quickly in bed, and I look over at the window, and I see this figure come through the window, and it has a long, black, misty-looking cape and hood. And it walks over across in front of me and goes over to the dresser, and there's a hutch on the dresser, and has little shelves on it, and on one of the shelves there's a picture frame, but the picture frame looks like a piece of miniature dollhouse furniture. It has a dresser, and it has a big mirror on it, and on the mirror it's a picture frame, and it had a wedding picture in it, and on the dresser was a little miniature light that actually lights, and there's a switch on the bottom of it. So anyway, this veiled figure, which I hear has been seen in the 70s, and this was not the 70s, and it drifts or glides over to the and to pick up that little that picture frame, and it picks it up and it looks at the picture, and it said something like, "So you're married now." And so I start to talk about the marriage. It's not interested. It flips the switch on the bottom of the dresser and sets it back down, so now the little lamp is lit, and it floats out the window. And I'm thinking, that's a pretty interesting little dream. Okay, fine, I'll just go back to sleep now. I've had weird dreams before, it's just another one of those things. So I get up the next morning, and my husband calls me and wishes me good morning, and my head turns. I look over at the hutch, and the lamp is on. the miniature dresser. So apparently, these things are checking on you. It's like they do everything on this planet to make sure that you're not happy, that everything is screwed up in your life. And it's like, it was a gasp. Oh, well, you're married? How in the heck did you pull that off? So anyway, as we continue in this house, my husband wakes up and I wake up. He feels his face being petted. He feels we have exotic perfumes over exotic. I mean, they were so seductive. Have never smelled anything like that in my entire life. In certain places in the house, and he wakes up because we hear things, the cupboard door slamming in the kitchen, we hear something jumping off and on a table out there. Something keeps slapping my jewelry box in the bedroom from time to time. The rocking chair we have in the bedroom just terrorized my two cats. They'd sit there and stare at the damn rocking chair, and it would creak and rock and make all this noise. I know they can see ranges that we can't. And they're watching this chair, and both of them are terrified. You can tell they won't move, period. They're just locked in place. So we're seeing things in the house, and we're seeing my husband kind of like shrieked one night. We were playing games at the table, and he says something just touched my leg. So I'm crawling around on the ground, and I'm touching this. I find it, and I said, well, it's little, whatever it is, and it's running around here. And then off and on throughout the whole thing, now we're having, God, I forgot so many things too in the other stores. But anyway, we're having the security lights. No, security lights are on a timer, and they're only supposed to be on for so long. But they're staying on beyond that point, and they're activated. And I can sit there behind a wall. This is the strange part. I'm sitting there behind a wall. I said, well, I'm going to see what's there. So I put my head around the corner. Lights go off. Put my head back. Lights go on. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. There's no moths. There's no bugs. Nothing setting off these lights. And so many times during the time we were there, we have an atomic clock. It takes a lot of electricity, great big jolt to make that thing change time. Well, it's back an hour in time when we have these events. Oh, no, look, it's up. It's advanced an hour in time. Every time we have these Bigfoot things and these orbs, we're photographing orbs all over the property and everything, the clock would move. And then one night, I'm and my EM thing, portion of it on my ovulus, well, again, that southeast wall, I mean, it's almost always in the red in that area, and it's on my side of the bed. It's always red. And then I was following something in the house that I couldn't see, but I knew it was there. Security lights were going berserk. The clock was going berserk. The inside lights in the house were going on and off. And I said, something's there, and I'm going to photograph it. I know where it is because I was running around the house now. I had my camera and the ovulus. So we had an oil painting. I took a picture of it. So I have this thing coming out of the oil painting, and it's not human. It has a narrower forehead with a furrowed brow. It has whiter jowls. It has furry, round, large black eyes, and it's coming out of the painting. Now the story of the painting goes, I got the painting in a collectible store. It's a very beautiful young Indian girl, and the guy that owned it apparently hated it. He got up one night from the dinner table and threw his plate of spaghetti at it, didn't explain to his family why, and then the next thing you know, it's in a collectible store and it's kind of stained a little bit until I cleaned it up. But anyway, I catch this thing. Maybe that's what he saw. I don't know. But it's coming out of the painting. But the interesting thing about this figure is that I believe it's Utah. Anyway, we're out on vacation. I was taking pictures of petroglyphs. And what do I find? I call it a frog person. But I find a petroglyph that looks like this thing coming out of the painting. And then I was watching one of those informative channels on TV, and it was showing Easter Island. And the natives there, according to their folklore, they have an image of the same thing in their cave. So now I photographed it. It's in a petroglyph here. There's an image drawn of it on Easter Island, and the natives there call them the Watchers. Even then, I have a friend. He's well educated. He's connected with the military. He's an engineer, and he has seen these in Germany in an interdimensional kind of something he did form. And when I again at this house, like I said, I've forgotten so many things. I've awakened with blood in my hand and marks on my body. I've had bruises on my body, and I have actually been raped by something. I don't know what it is, but the thumbprints were on the inside of my legs, on both legs. My husband in this house and I have had. This is down the road, but anyway, I felt again that there was something on the outside of the house. I was told to get my camera, so I get my camera. Of course, you have to freezing temperatures. I'm running around there barefoot in my nightgown and everything, and don't want to step off of the walkway because I could really hurt myself. So anyway, I'm there, and I know something's in an area, so I take a picture. And the pixels are really, really bad on it. I had to really screw with the picture a lot to bring it out. So what it is, it was, I can't pronounce it, but that meeting that Eisenhower is supposed to have had at the base, apparently there were people or some being called I can't pronounce it again, like an Eben, and they manufactured these clones, the rapid cloning process, and they call them archeloids. And they created them, and they gave one apparently to our government, one or more than one, to study, okay? And I've seen a picture of one of these because it's in my training manual, and that's what was on the picture. This was a female. The picture that I was given was a drawing, and I only showed the head. But this showed the picture showed the whole body, and it was a woman, and she was totally nude. She was looking over her right shoulder at me. She had, I thought it was very peculiar. She had a headdress on. It kind of reminded me of the headdress on that figure on Mars, on the face on Mars. It had very similar to that headdress. She had a very bent, crooked nose. She had rather large, liddy eyes. She had thick lips. And she was, like I said, she was looking over her right shoulder at me. And I only found that later on in the morning when I started screwing around with the picture. Because I was like, dang, I just want to go to bed. Okay, I did my thing. I took my picture. You wanted me out here. I did it. Okay, fine. So anyway, so then I get up the next morning, even before I looked at the picture, and I'm thinking, geez, why am I hurting so bad? And I'm looking at I'm like, man, my arms. So then I raised my sleeves up, and from my middle knuckle on both hands to about 3 inches below my elbow, I'm burned. I've got really bright pink burns on my arms. I never blistered. I showed him to my friend that has been trained. He was training Navy SEALs, and he worked for the Secret Service and all that other stuff. I showed him. And I had those burns for over 3 weeks. Okay? The other thing is that I noticed that, well, I'm going to stop here and interject something else. But my husband didn't really believe in all this stuff, even though he was seeing all this weird stuff and everything, because, it's a survival mechanism thing. So anyway, he's out there photographing with me. He's photographing all these orbs. But what we noticed was that, okay, I was out in the front yard just for giggles. I was doing some high magic, and I was calling them in, and they came in by the thousands. And we had, but what we noticed in the photographs when they were coming in, you couldn't see it with your naked eye, but you can see it with an IR. And, pardon me, we noticed there's a blue light in the sky. And this person that was trained with the Secret Service, I didn't say anything. He's just looking at my photographs, and he's saying, "What's that?" I just smiled, and I go, "Good, you noticed it." He said, "I'm trained." And I said, "Yeah, I kind of hoped you'd pick up on it." Anyway, no matter where we turned the camera, if there were orbs coming in, there was a blue light, and they were coming from that blue light. So anyway, we're on to something new here. And then so a lot of these things, these beings that are Maleficent, they're, I don't know what the military's doing with them, but they, whatever's happening is cyclic. So if I was like keeping a diary, I would know, I mean, yes, things would happen off and on all year long, but the great big events, they would happen around the same times all the time. So I don't know, did that mean a portal was opening up there? Because I know that they move around. I know that they follow a cycle. Just like I believe Bigfoot too, just like hunting, follows a cycle. So in a year, if Bigfoot's going to be in an area, chances are, unless you're going to bring a stadium full of people down there and he knows it, it's going to follow that cycle. So anyway, I was kind of like called out another one of those things in the morning, and I take this picture, and I was talking to a Polish journalist, and he has really, really some incredible equipment he was showing us. So he said that I am, to his knowledge, I am the only person that has a picture of a reptilian and an orb together. All I got was a headshot on the reptilian. It was doing one of these interdimensional things. The photograph has been analyzed. It is valid, and it was taken by a military intelligence person. It was analyzed by one, so it's valid. And my husband and I I'd walked around the property before with this Ovilus, and the Ovilus is consistent, and it goes to the same places on the property, and it told me that there were 2 graves there. It told me the name of this person, and it which I didn't know who it was until I talked to my friend that was an engineer, and he knew the history of Oregon, and I didn't. And he said, "Well, that guy," he said, "he was a pastor, and he was killed by the Indians." and the Ovilus told me that. They said the Indian soldiers killed him. So I don't know if he was murdered on our property or not. But the graves, it keeps referencing those two graves when I step there. That area is very quiet, by the way. It's very, very different. And then I walked around the property, and each time I come to the place where I took the reptilian's photograph, again, like I want you to know that every time I walked around the property, it was consistent. And it told me burning, ashes, silent. And then the Ovilus would turn itself off. Almost respectful. Where that reptilian appeared, it would not activate. I'd pass that point. I'd go around the house with it again, repeat it again. And so that's something else that had happened. And I had this won't seem relevant to you at the time, but now I've got some more pieces to the puzzle, and I see that they fit. But anyway, I was in Virginia City, and I met some interesting people there, and we shared a lot of stories. But this one woman I met, I can't think of her name. Anyway, she recently she passed away not soon after, but and she's not known for mediumship either, and people were quite surprised when she gave me a reading right there. And she said, which is typical, which is what most people say. They say you're surrounded by an army. There's hundreds and hundreds of people around you, and a lot of them are military. And she saw some immediate relatives that she said were around me, but I'm not familiar with my family tree, so I couldn't validate that. And she said there's one person that really likes you, and his name is Don, and he's considerably younger. Well, the thing is, and then so I took it for face value, and I thanked her, for her input, and didn't think much of it. So finally, when my husband and I arrived home, it was quite late, and I stayed up late, and he was in bed already, and you got to realize that we're in the woods. Our neighbors are very far from us, and I'm in the shower. I have this really beautiful guitar music, and I'm like, God, could a radio be on? Is my husband up? Is he listening to something, or what's going on? Or so anyway, I go and I wrap a towel around me, and I grab my Ovilus, and because I can see when I looked out the bathroom window, he was sound asleep, and I start walking through rooms, and I go in the living room, and right where I sit on the couch, in back of the couch, my EM meter goes to the red, and then I ask the Ovilus, and I go, what was that I just heard? And it said a general melody. And I said, and who's playing for this for me? And it said Don. So those were, and then I almost left off. It's a good thing I wrote these notes. But anyway, with everything that has happened, so I meet in the area with a local cultural heritage tribal person. And so we go out to lunch, and I asked him about some of the stuff, and he said, Jeannette, if you want to know why this is happening to you, wait a minute, let me back up. No, I'll just finish and add this in later. He said, if you want to know why this is happening to you, it is because you live in the most holy and sacred of places. And he asked me if the altar was polished, and I said, yes, it was. He goes, then it was ours. He said, we did everything there. And this guy was was the grandson of the last great holy man they had. And he said, we did everything there, births, deaths, marriages. He said, everything. I said, what's everything? He wouldn't tell me. Okay? And then within this time frame, it was before I met with him, we had other issues with the clock. We had other issues with a lot of stuff going on. And I went outside the house, and there were 2 footprints there. And they were different than the Bigfoot footprints. And I asked the ovulus what they were, and the ovulus described the ground. It described the measurement, how far they were away from each other. It described my property, and I asked it, am I going to be taken again? And the ovulus printed out on the screen, last levitation, Jesus. And then I was visibly shaken. So anyway, now that I have this information, I'm adding it in at the wrong time. When I was talking to this tribal person, I told him about that. And he says, Bigfoot isn't the only thing we have out here. He says, we have the little people, which sounds very Irish. So you can see how these things have traveled around the world. We're all impacted by this. We have the little people. And and I go, what do you mean by that? And he said, they're like maybe 2.5 to 4 feet tall. And he said they're really hairy. And he said we call them the Anamiki. And that sounds an awful lot like Anunnaki. And I can see that name changing over time, just very much like our last names do. And so I kind of did as much research as I could because I ran into a lot of dead ends. And the Anamiki, these little creatures, were associated with the thunder gods, the things in the sky that made fire and smoke. And it comes from the Algonquin. So the Anamiki are associated with UFOs.
Wow.
And that is a mind blower. And so everything I've had there has been, and these beings, the Anamiki, are all associated with them. And to top this story off, he said, he gave me 2 stories. He said, when he was talking about how holy the area was, and to me that's a very polite way of saying all shit breaks loose when it comes to the Indians.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can verify that what our temple's done and what the Indians done is that they've opened portholes into other dimensions and haven't closed them. I've done it myself inadvertently. And in fact, I don't know how to close them. So we look like Swiss cheese out there. And what happened, the guy was saying there was a road that was probably maybe 2.5 miles from me, because we're not talking as the crow flies. I mean, these are dirt roads that, you have to go down this ditch and around this stump and everything else. Anyway, when you finally get out there, he said he went into town, just a little bit outside of it. He described a certain amount of buildings. And he said there was a 10-foot wide silver ball that was hovering up off the ground. And he and this son just stood there and watched it. And then it shot off into the sky, but it didn't go straight up. It went out at an angle. He showed me with his hand. that it went off with an angle. And then he said there was another time he's out with friends in the woods and at night, and he stopped when he started to describe it, and he said, "There's a war going on up there." And I go, I'm just quiet, I'm listening. He said, because I was out there, and he said, there was a big triangle in space. And I go, what space to you? And he said, he just looked at me bewildered. And I said, well, it was big enough that it just seemed way, way out there to you. And he said, yes. And it was a triangular thing. He said it came in, and he said he knew it was triangular because it blocked out the stars in that pattern. And he said when it was flying over the trees, it was really high up, he said, and it blew up. But he said the thing is, it blew up from the center out, and that's how the light pattern followed it. It just got light dark from the center and then went to the outer edges of it. And then he said when it what did it do? And then he said it lit up the whole forest. He said just like day, and I could see all the rabbits running. He said it just looked like right now, like the daytime, like we're talking. I could see everything.
Well, Jeanette, I hate to cut it off, but we're out of time, and we're going to have to have you back on to finish, telling your experiences and stuff, because it's fascinating.
Oh, I only got one more left, so that's it.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine.
All right.
Are you going to finish
yeah,
or?
Do you want me to? Okay, because this one's pretty short.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, we were my husband and I were on a little mini vacation, and we were coming back, and we were on the 140 highway, and we were going into Oregon, and we'd left Lakeview. We were already well out of Lakeview, and this was he's driving, so naturally he can't really see, and I looked on my left. And I see, if I hold it at arm's length, a quarter size, it would be quarter size, a black matte dumbbell-shaped object. It was flying, but the thing is, it had a thick bar in the middle, but the ends were perfect cubes, perfect. And then I'm like looking at it for like 3 seconds, and then I start scrambling down to the floor to get my purse and get my camera. And by that time, what they did is they like cleared the road. They blasted through rock, and we passed this rock wall. And we were driving in it for a while, and then I lost taking a picture of the dumbbell. And this was about 6:30 or 7 p.m. on October 6th on 2016. And then it was really weird because the sky was very it looked like there was a lot of dust in the sky. It was very just by the coloring, but there wasn't dust. You know what I mean? There wasn't anything blowing. And the colors were very muted and everything of the clouds and whatnot. And we saw this gigantic, very fluorescent-looking S in the sky. It was huge. I have no idea. It went through several layers of overlaid, several layers of different types of clouds in the sky, this S. And it was fluorescent, like I said. And all the other clouds came and went, but this S thing stayed for, I don't know, over an hour, definitely over an hour. And then, but like I said, all the other clouds came and went. They disappeared, changed conformity or whatever, but not this gigantic perpendicular S. So finally, we're almost home now, and the top part of the S started to wear away, and then I went out and checked the sky, and it was, totally gone. So then when I call my little voice, I don't know what it is, but it's intuition or whatever, tells me to go outside. It's 9 o'clock. Pitch black. I mean, the mountain sky is black. You don't have any lights from the city. It's like black velvet. And then what is glowing in the sky? There's a giant S. It's back. It was totally gone, and now it's there. It was huge. It's miles and miles long. And it had that same fluorescent quality to it. And then later on, and then after I start seeing these things, I start channeling all these things. Like when we had that deal in that apartment with all that weird stuff and that candle and everything, I started writing in all these languages and had to get them translated. And I'm starting, after I see this thing, I start doing Hebrew. So I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, that's my last story of the ships I've seen and what's happened afterwards. But I know that whatever happens afterwards does a number on your relationships and your family.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
But like I said, we'll have you back on so that way we can delve more into the other aspects of your research and UFOs. And I mean, if you don't mind,
I don't mind.
Okay. Well, is there any way anybody can, if they want to get a hold of you, like if you have a website or Facebook or any way they can get get a copy of your book?
Oh, well, they can get a copy of my book on Amazon if they're not being ridiculous on the price. They do crazy things so your book doesn't sell. They had my book up to $106 at one point. They had another guy's up to over $500 to try and stop people from buying your stuff. But it's on Amazon, and just put in the UFO Bigfoot connection, our past, our present, our hell, because basically the book kind of tells you where things are going. And I'm trying to write a new book, and that is going to be so mind blowing. It's just you're not even I don't know. You're going to be shocked. So anyway, I'm trying to write another one, but that's where you can get it. As far as getting in touch with me personally, that's kind of hard to do because I'm really concerned with, people being legitimate, you know what I mean, rather than being followed by people that, are looky-loos or trying to ridicule you,
Right, I understand.
Right, my job it really is try to inform people and maybe to help people and make them not feel like they're so alone,
Uh-huh. Well, in that case then, Jeannette, I appreciate you coming on the show then, and we'll work out something to get you back on so we can finish up discussing more because I want to delve into, the Bible and its aspects of ETs and also demonic aliens and stuff like that, if you're down with that.
Yeah, I'm not, as far as demonic aliens, just a little bit, and I'm going to be getting into a lot of it on my book because I don't think they're aliens. I think they're more than that, and I'm really, I've done an experiment recently. I've taken a photograph of another interdimensional being. I don't think they're aliens. I don't know much about the Bible, although I went to Catholic school almost my whole life. I've kind of withdrawn a bit from that, and I think the interdimensional beings are really manifesting for a reason. I think I know how they're manifesting. I think I know why the history is being destroyed in Europe. I'm going to bring all that to the forefront in my book. And a lot of people know what's going on as far as religion goes, but they don't know why. And I'm probably the only person at this point, I would say I know it sounds egotistical, that knows why. I know why the agenda. And I'm going to bring that out in my book, but I can't say too much because it's going to screw up my book, and it's going to be explosive. So that's why I'm hesitating on that.
Okay. Well, that's
okay.
fine. Well, we'll work things out, and I'll let you know. We'll contact each other and get us another date and time and everything set up. So, like I said, I appreciate you coming on the show. You have a good night, ma'am.
All right. Thank you. You too, Ronnie. Take care now.
Okay. Oh, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, that's it for us tonight. I want to thank Jeannette La Tulippe. Make sure I'm saying that right. She didn't complain, so I guess that's a good thing. For coming on the show, and thank everyone who took the time to listen in. I'd like to give a big shout out to the Vibe Radio Network. Yeah, I got to flip the page over. Sorry. I say this every week, and I can't remember it. I'm so drugs just fuck me up. And to Ryan for putting up with us. Also to the first responders and our men and women in armed services, thank you all for your service and sacrifices you and your families make every day to our great nation. Our guest next Thursday night, March 1st, will be Preston Danette. Preston is an author and paranormal and UFO investigator. Tune in next week for another exciting show starting at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Everyone can go to our Facebook page Within the Chaos, and don't forget to like our page to see upcoming guests along with past shows, postings, and you can go to my website at blackdiamondps.org or blogtalkradio.com/Within the Chaos. Also, we have our new YouTube channel up for Within the Chaos. You can go check that out for past shows. I want to thank everyone again. Until next week, everyone have a safe weekend, and good night. Melinda, wake the fuck up.
Good night, all.
Night, love you all. You people are so good to us. I mean, let's see. What do y'all want to close out? Let's do something really, really good. Let's go with Wasteland. Love this song.